When discussing women's issues, feminists become very territorial and outraged if men's experiences are even mentioned, even if it's done in the context of how women's issues intersect with men's. For example, pointing out that intimate partner and sexual violence are not gendered issues infuriates them. Tempering discussion of the feminist believe women narrative with any mention of the civil right of due process drives them up the wall. On any given day, one might argue that it's just not possible to honestly discuss these issues while excluding certain aspects based on which sex they affect, and one might receive a response consisting of an acknowledgement, or at least a counterargument, but not on International Women's Day. That day, we're told, is strictly for discussing feminist interests, feminist-defined women's issues, and feminist women's experiences. It is not for discussing ways that female accountability can improve the lives of women, men, and children. Oh, and if you're a non-feminist woman who wants to inject some common sense into the discussion, you're not welcome to participate. So that's the standard feminists have set, and the standard feminists will respect, right? After all, International Men's Day is about men, right? It exists to celebrate men and masculinity, to promote men's health and well-being, to highlight men's interests, including their experiences of discrimination and other forms of abuse.
HBR Talk with Hannah Wallen.
Out of respect for their own standards, feminists should logically refrain from trying to make the day about their ideology and their opinions regarding men's issues, right? They should especially refrain from demonizing men or victim blaming them, or making the day about women's issues, right? As they do annually, feminists have already begun posting on social media to admonish men that International Men's Day should be about dismantling patriarchy and combating toxic masculinity. Surely you didn't think they were going to leave the day to men, did you? Feminist organizations have already scheduled events. XY Online is hosting a feminist International Men's Day conference on the topic of masculinity, patriarchy, and feminism. The site's administrators claim that International Men's Day is being hijacked by men's rights activists. They say they will be holding a demonstration at noon on International Men's Day outside courts in Manchester and London, quote, to reinforce the importance of men taking action to challenge the failings of the police and criminal justice system in not taking male violence against women seriously and adequately investigating, prosecuting, and sentencing men who are violent towards women. Imagine a men's group hosting a similar protest on International Women's Day. We could reinforce the importance of women taking action to challenge the failings of a system that declines to take female-perpetrated abuse seriously. Maybe International Women's Day would be a good day to talk about how research on mutually perpetrated domestic violence supports the idea that reducing female violence would reduce nearly all categories of domestic violence and decrease injuries to both sexes. Similarly, we could draw public attention to the fact that the UK government determines whether to impose the label rapist on a sex offender not by the severity of the crime, but by the biological sex of the offender. Or maybe we could discuss the issue of mothers who kill their children. I'm sure XY's objections would be heard around the world. Another organization's website, tokenman.org, advertises Masculinity in the Workplace, which the site says is an annual event to mark International Men's Day. How do they plan to mark the day? According to their description, Masculinity in the Workplace aims to challenge gender stereotypes in workplace culture to enable everyone to thrive in a more inclusive and diverse world by encouraging more men to become active allies, meaning the entire 3-chapter event is just a sales pitch for feminism. Indian publication The Daily Star posted an article about combating patriarchy on International Men's Day, which could have been a copy-paste of any feminist article promoting their patriarchy narrative, with a few lines about International Men's Day thrown in for relevance. Even KTSW, the non-commercial radio station at Texas State University in San Marcos, Texas, hosted a blog post about toxic masculinity for International Men's Day, sans any mention of positive masculine traits. Of course, this is no surprise. Feminists have been trying to figure out how to respond to this day for years. They've ranged from declaring it illegitimate, with cries of "Every day is International Men's Day," to calling it a misogynistic attack on feminism, to trying to relabel it Patriarchy Day. Over the past few years, they began trying to co-opt it with messages about how the day should be used to dismantle the patriarchy or confront so-called toxic masculinity, a concept feminists use to stereotype men and boys by engaging in two falsehoods. One involves labeling immature behaviors and attitudes present in both sexes masculine and presenting them as mature male social norms. The other involves discussing attitudes and behaviors that exist on a spectrum from dysfunctional to healthy, like stoicism and ruggedness, as if only the dysfunctional end of the spectrum applies when they are present in men. Feminists use the toxic masculinity narrative to shift blame for legal and social standards that disadvantage or discriminate against men and boys, from the standards themselves and those who uphold them, to the concept of masculinity itself, in order to justify opposing reform. When they're not doing that explicitly, they try to use the theme highlighted on InternationalMen'sDay.com's website to smuggle feminist anti-male narratives in under the radar. Forbes published an article that began by pointing out to readers that, quote, one of the 6 pillars of International Men's Day, celebrated on November 19 this year, is to improve gender relations and promote gender equality. The theme this year is better relations between men and women. The article went on to talk exclusively about what men can do to help women in order to achieve this goal. Needless to say, it was highlighted on Twitter by he for she because that is their overarching theme. There was one idea that was conspicuously absent from every feminist source I could find. Not one of them highlighted International Men's Day by considering what women could do for men in an effort to improve gender relations and promote gender equality. Imagine what that conversation would be like. This week, HBR Talk will discuss feminist attempts to hijack International Men's Day and consider whether women still have the opportunity to improve gender relations and what women can do to promote gender equality. The discussion streams on multiple platforms. You can tune in to the YouTube live stream or find other listening options on HoneyBadgerBrigade.com.